We want to give you a chance to comment on some of the issues that have been a part of the agenda here today. As we get our sound correct. Yours is working fine there.
Okay.
Before we do that, what is it like being the mayor of Charlotte?
You know, I have to say the last 8 weeks have been a whirlwind. So I'll tell you a funny story. I just left Orlando, where I spoke to 2,000 firefighters, and I gave a speech about the need for diversity and inclusion in the workforce of firefighters. So I go to the airport, and I don't have a flight back for this meeting, but all of it gets worked out because Tracy Montross is a magician. Thank you, Tracy.
Tracy's in the back of there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy,
Thank you, Tracy,
for getting our speaker here.
Yes. But I go to the gate, and they're calling for people to get off the plane, and I turn to this guy. He comes up and he says, "I'll take the voucher. I don't have to fly." I said, "You're probably giving me a seat. I'm the mayor of Charlotte. Thank you." "You're the mayor of Charlotte? Oh my gosh, this is great. There's a panther over there, Carolina's panther. Trey is over there. Will you take a picture with me?" That's what it's like to be the mayor of Charlotte. You take pictures with the Panthers. You take pictures in airports, because this city is recognized everywhere. Now, part of it is just because I am on this honeymoon period of being an African-American mayor from Charlotte, North Carolina, one of the best cities in the country, fastest growing in millennials, small businesses, all of those things, and we're recognized. And I'm just a symbol of that recognition. So it's like that in airports in most places, even at the grocery store. There's some things that I do that I don't ordinarily think about doing or wouldn't have thought about doing, but I try to go to a house of worship at least 1 or 2 every weekend. And then afterwards, I go to a grocery store in that same area. Not that I actually shop, but I can always find something to buy in a grocery store, obviously. It's one of those things that's where you learn about this community. People actually talk to you in grocery stores. And I try to go to a different one, north, south, east, west. In Charlotte, just depending on where the house of worship is, I go to the grocery store. And people tell me their stories. And that's one of the things that being mayor is really about, hearing from people every day, their stories. And they can range from, my kids saw you and you said something nice to them, to I need a job. Or it could be they've had an incident of violence in their family, and they just want to share that with me. That's what it means to be a mayor, to listen and see people every day that make this wonderful city what it is.
Thank you for that. And let's start with housing. We just heard a report with some recommendations on housing. What can we do in 2018 as a city? What can the business community do to help advance the need for additional, call it affordable or workforce housing?
Well, I want you to know that this is there are 3 issues that we have as a focus, and all of you are aware of the City Council's commitment unanimously. Now, that was the last council. We're going to bring the other council up in a minute, but basically we said that we would work on jobs for people that didn't have the opportunity to work here. We work on affordable housing, and we try to make sure that everybody had a safe and great neighborhood to live in. So affordable housing is in the top 3. I've worked on affordable housing in this community since 1978. And it's different than then. It has different phases of need. I worked recently, most recently, while I was just in consulting, with the homeless initiative. Great work there. But what we're facing today is something that we don't know how to address without having your participation and cooperation in it. We have all of the things that Dion just talked about. We've got the 1960s development that we've had, 60s and 70s, that are now beginning to age out. How are we going to retain those? How are we going to deal with displacement of people who find that their affordable rents are not sufficient when there's development pressure? I had a woman over in Plaza Midwood come to me and said that she's afraid to open her door. She's older. She bought a bungalow over there, probably about $70,000 30 years ago, and they are banging on her door saying, "Will you sell me your house?" And she's afraid to come to her front door. That's the kind of pressure that we have, not just with the single-family homes, but with apartment communities that are in what I would call rapidly developing or redeveloping neighborhoods that we have. The strategies in the Evergreen Report, I think, reflect the work that many of us have been doing in the last several years. So I'm going to say, Dion suggested the 8 recommendations. I'm going to go to say that we've got to take action really, really quickly on the acquisition of those 1960s and 70s units, apartment complexes. If we don't do that in the next 12 months, they're going to be gone. And we will have people, Julie Isold, who's here, our Mayor Pro Tem, worked with the family that was on WBT-TV, profiled, and she went out. The family, he works every day, kid at Northwest School for the Arts, she's disabled, and he works 3rd shift so that she can have the right and appropriate care without being on assistance. And he's paying his rent every day, and now he's been forced out. He had to move out of his complex because of redevelopment pressure. And now he lives in a place that's farther away without adequate transportation. His kid can't go to the same great school without a lot of extra initiative. So we've disrupted an entire life that's going to slide down if we don't step up and do something. Now, maybe some people would say, that's not our role to step up and do it. I would argue with you that that child being successful in school is the key reason for us to step up. Because if that family becomes homeless, we've got an entirely different structure to deal with. If we can keep them in an affordable unit, then that's going to make a difference. So acquisition and keeping people from being displaced is something we've got to do, and it can't wait. We're going on the council retreat this Wednesday, and my message to my colleagues will be, if in 90 days we haven't taken action around affordable housing, we're not doing what the people elected us to do.
Wow, wow.
That's true.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned job creation as one of the top 3 priorities. Would love to share with this crowd that this past Monday night, the City Council, the new City Council with 5 or 6 new members, if you will, had its first opportunity to vote on an economic development incentives package for a company that's already here that we're working with. Several hundred very good jobs. Very pleased to report that we got an 11-0 vote from the City Council. So Mayor Pro Tem, and I don't think we have any other City Council members here, that was significant. And the good news is we have a pipeline with additional projects that will be coming to you. So let's talk for a second about another item that was on our agenda earlier. It's the Charlotte way when we rarely, but there have been occasions, we have not passed bonds or we have lost something. And we've figured out how to make ourselves better and go forward. We're still early from the news of Amazon. We have limited feedback from the company. What are your thoughts as we sit here a week and a half later on what we can do to make ourselves more competitive for the next such project?
Well, first I want to let you know that I did exactly what you've done by congratulating Raleigh. I called Nancy McFarland, who's the mayor of Raleigh, and I called the governor, and I said to them, Raleigh made this list, and how important it is that we support them, because what's good for Raleigh is good for North Carolina, what's good for North Carolina is good for Charlotte. And if we really talk about the idea of development, and we believe that, we've had lots of announcements. You guys have done a wonderful job. And imagine if Raleigh had kind of just said, well, why didn't we get it? No, that's not what happened. We've got to remember that we exist in this state with others. One of the very first things that I did after election, in fact, the day that I was sworn in, the night that I was sworn in, the next day I was on a plane going to Washington, D.C. to visit every member of our congressional delegation. My 60-day plan was to go out and see people that are important to our community. So I've been to Washington, I've been to Raleigh twice, I've met with all of the metro mayors in Wilmington this month, and then I've been back to Washington once again. We have to remember that we're a region, and until Anson County does well, we would not have succeeded. So when I'm talking to the rules chairman from down east, and I say to them, we need NC 74 to be a U.S. highway, And that when you build that, when you go to Anson County, you need to put broadband in the plans to build that highway. We need to connect our Wilmington port, we need to Charlotte, and we need to connect Charlotte to Asheville. We've got the airport, they've got the port, but in between there are communities that are suffering. And we have got to figure out a way to make them successful as well. So any job opportunity in this region is going to be important to us because we're important to North Carolina.
We've also talked about the Panthers here today and the business retention opportunity that they represent. What, if anything, can you share with us about the city's thinking about how the city can play a role to help keep Charlotte competitive for the long-term retention of that organization that's so important to us?
So I'm sure we can all keep a secret in this room, right? There's no secret to be kept, actually. This is what I would say about the Panthers. We know their economic impact on our state. Every time one of those really high-powered players come to our city, they pay income taxes to the state. We know what the sales tax mean. We know what our hospitality taxes are. So we can calculate numbers like that. I'm not so sure you can calculate a number for having a person like Thomas Davis live in this community and give back. I went to Cam Newton's Camp for Kids. Now, he doesn't talk about a lot of the things that he does, but when I saw those 40 or 50 kids with him and the way that he talked to them with straight talk, you can't calculate that value. So I have this kind of idea around the Panthers is that they are the biggest retention opportunity that we have, and we're going to have to step up. Now, I read all of the stories about the requests for, or the imagined requests, but what I would say to you, until we have an owner that comes to us and we have a chance to talk with that owner, everything else is just a story in the paper, a story online, an opinion. And you know, everybody has opinions, right? So until we find out who our new owner is going to be, and we talk to them about the assets that we think we have in this community, then we'll be able to have a community dialogue and conversation. And I'm sure that every one of you will get a chance to weigh in. Probably about 890,000 people will get a chance to weigh in, one way or the other. My belief is that we have an NFL team that we should keep, if we can afford to do it. If we have the kind of relationship that we need, I think we can be successful doing it.
Madam Mayor, you've been kind to find your way back from Orlando to be with us today. I want to ask you one final question, and then we'll let you and everybody else find their way to a cocktail. So in front of this audience of 200 plus business leaders, a great representation of the Charlotte business community, what do you need from us for Charlotte to be successful?
Well, that's a great question. Because you are absolutely so important to what we are. I came to Charlotte to go to Queens when it was a woman's school. Many of you were probably at Davison at some point, and you stayed in this community. If you've just moved here, there's a reason why. If you stayed here, there's a reason why. So what I need you to do is be very much committed to taking and supporting the actions necessary for us to continue to be the best city in the Southeast, in our Sun Belt. In fact, I think one of the best cities in this country. And we can only do that if we continue the public-private partnerships that we created years ago. There was a time in Charlotte when I was just a young woman that nothing was done in this town without meetings of the business community with the government community. Now, it was kind of stilted. Of course, you know, most of you guys would know and remember when all of the elected officials went to two churches and they were both on Queens Road. Well, we don't have that kind of community anymore. We've got to deal with people that are diverse in race and ethnicity, in change of what they want and how they want to live, how they want to move around the city, how they want to create opportunities, whether they want to be in their garage inventing something or if they're going to work in one of our towers. What we've got to do and what I need you to do is to really think what you can do to contribute to the big picture and the vision. Because I believe if we can agree on that vision, that we are the best city in this country, if we can agree on that, the rest of it are details to work out. Just like you've got the Evergreen report, just like you've got your workforce development reports, but we've got the university, we've got Central Piedmont, all of this works together. If we can just agree that we're going to make it work, because we always have and always will. And that's my commitment to you.
Thank you.